Welcome. I've wanted to say a lot of these things for a long time because for the past decade, I've worked inside the system as a device engineer, a product strategist, and a voice for patient-specific design. Every lab, every OR, every boardroom I've sat in, I've seen the same disconnect. We rightfully celebrate surgical precision, but let's tell the truth. We're still cutting the bone to fit the implant, not the other way around. Most implants come in sizing options, 3, maybe 5. If your patient's anatomy doesn't match one of them exactly, a few cuts, some compromise, we make it fit. Even in the most advanced ORs with robotic arms, navigation systems, digital templating, we're still working within a system that wasn't built for personalization. And yet surgeons make it work. Not just well, but exceptionally. Most joint replacements go off today without a hitch. Patients walk again, work again, live again. That's not just success. That's life-changing medicine. So let me be clear. This podcast isn't here to critique the people. It's here to challenge the system. I believe surgeons do remarkable work with what they've been given, and most are constantly searching for ways to do even better. My goal is to give you the tools to make that easier, to walk into a conversation with your hospital admin or implant rep and say, we can do this differently. We can do this better. And here's why. I couldn't unsee it. I was in the biomechanical lab at the Hospital for Special Surgery, watching an engineer design an implant around one patient's anatomy, not a generic catalog size. Just weeks earlier, I'd been studying failed implants, trying to understand why so many break down after just 10 years. Now, I was watching a fully personalized solution come to life and go into a patient. That was the spark. Since then, it's been my mission. Take what works for 5% of patients and make it the standard for 95%. This podcast is part of that mission. Welcome to Unstandardized, Built for One, a 10-episode series about the shift towards personalization in orthopedics. What's broken, what's emerging, and what it'll take to build something better. Along the way, we'll walk through the history, the economics, the clinical trade-offs, and the tools that are finally making true precision possible. Eventually, I'd love to bring on guests, spotlight innovators, and take requests. But this first season is focused. Whether we're talking about custom implants, biologics, or surgical guides that follow the plan step by step. This is about one thing: precision, personalization, not approximation. And that's what this first episode's about. Not just a critique, but context. Because to understand the path to personalization, we have to understand how we got here. Today, we'll walk through how standardized surgery becomes the global norm, from battlefield trauma kits to templated elective joint replacements. We'll unpack why it's stuck, what's breaking down, and where the hidden costs are. We'll also start exploring what's replacing it. AI that generates guides in hours, point-of-care labs that print from inside the hospital, software that turns scans into surgical plans in just one click. But more importantly, we'll look at what's still standing in the way: reimbursement structures, outdated codes, regulatory inertia, cultural resistance. Because personalization isn't a future concept, it's a current reality being used in small pockets waiting to scale. One more thing. Every fact and figure in this podcast comes from peer-reviewed sources. I've linked the studies in the show notes. So if you want to challenge something, share your thoughts, or just dig deeper, please do. We're building a real community here. This podcast isn't hype. It's not a highlight reel of robotic buzzwords. And it's definitely not a soft sell disguised as thought leadership. This is for the builders, the surgeons, engineers, designers, and rebels who believe anatomy should dictate design, not the other way around. If you think close enough is no longer good enough, you're in the right place. Let's begin. To understand why we're still operating in this standardized way, we need to understand where it started. Not in the OR, but on the battlefield. Modern orthopedic surgery was forged in war. In World War I and again in World War II. Trauma surgeons were overwhelmed. Shattered femurs, open fractures, thousands of wounded. They needed solutions fast, scalable, repeatable. So they brought kits, pre-packed trays of implants, standardized sizes, simple instruments. One set could treat hundreds of soldiers regardless of their anatomy. It wasn't perfect, but it was predictable. And in war, predictability saves lives. When those battlefield methods came home, they stuck. By the 1950s, hospitals were applying the same logic to civilian trauma, and soon to elective procedures too. In 1962, Sir John Charnley introduced the low-friction arthroplasty, the foundation of modern total hip replacement. His system used a small number of standardized components, a 22mm head, a cemented stem, a polyethylene cup. It wasn't designed to fit everyone, it was designed to work, and it did for thousands. Charlie didn't create a flaw, he created a breakthrough, but the industry built a model around it and scaled that model without evolving it. By the 1980s, modular trays with fixed sizing had become the global standard. Over 95% of total joint replacements were performed using templated sets that were selected well before the patient even entered the OR. Not because they offer the best fit, but because they were easy to stock, sterilizable, and scalable. What was built for wartime trauma was now used to treat every elective hip, knee, and shoulder on the planet. And that model, born in crisis, was never meant to serve high-precision, personalized surgery in our modern technological world. We live in this world built on precision. Our cars park themselves. In just a decade, unlocking our phones evolved from a 4-digit PIN to a fingerprint to now a facial scan. Our shopping apps recommend custom shoe inserts based on how we walk. Across industries, personalization is the default, not the exception. AI tunes our playlists, every streaming service learns what we like, even the ads we scroll past are customized for us. But in the operating room, that level of precision is still the outlier. Most implants are still pulled from trays built around averages. Most surgical tools are designed to accommodate variability, not eliminate it. And most workflows are built for throughput, not personalization. This is the disconnect. We've built a world that expects tailored experiences, but we're still delivering orthopedic care based on wartime logistics. At first glance, the OR looks prepared. The trays are there, the instruments are laid out, the sizing options are labeled and ready. It feels modern, it feels efficient. But standard doesn't always mean precise, and what looks like progress is often just habit repeated. Predictable workflows, pre-sterilized trays, labeled sizes, everything is neat, labeled, repeatable. Again, for a while, it was progress. It meant we could perform more procedures in more places with more consistent results. It meant surgical teams could move fast and hospitals could manage logistics. But over time, that standardization became the default, not because it was ideal, but because it was efficient. And the healthcare, efficiency often wins. Yet something gets lost in that trade-off. Because when you look a little closer, past the trays and the protocols, you start to see a system that quietly asks surgeons to adapt to the implants, not the other way around. A system built not for the individual, but for the average. And that works, until it doesn't. The trays looked ready, the sizes are labeled, the plan is in place. But in surgery, plans bend. A component doesn't quite fit, ream deeper, rotate it, grab the next tray. These aren't failures, they're habits, built into a rhythm of every procedure. We've normalized improvisation, built a workflow that expects it, and every adjustment has a ripple effect. More time, more trays, more stress. Over time, the system stopped aiming for the perfect fit and started assuming the surgeon would make it fit. We don't always call these compromises, but we feel them. In the time added, the trays opened, and the subtle imbalances left behind. That's not a critique, it's a clue. Because if we're always adjusting the plan, maybe it's the plan that needs to change. Because today, in hospitals around the world, that compromise is being challenged. Not just by theory, but by action. Point-of-care labs are emerging inside hospitals, not just top academic centers either, but in regional systems too. And they're producing more than anatomical models. They're designing cutting guides, implants, patient match tools, just steps from the OR. Surgeons are planning digitally. Engineers are joining surgical teams. Startups are converting scans into surgical guides in hours, not weeks. 3D printers now sit next to sterilizers. The result? Less approximation, more intention. And for the first time, personalization isn't just for the rare or the complex. It's for the routine. Because once you've seen what's possible, how it improves fit, reduces time, eliminates backup trays, it's hard to go back. This isn't just new tech. It's a new expectation. And if you're listening to this podcast, chances are you already feel it. You're not waiting for the shift. You are a part of it. But the question is, if the shift has already begun, why isn't it standard? Why do most hospitals still rely on trays? Why are surgeons still choosing from sizing charts that haven't changed in decades? The answer is because while the technology has moved forward, the infrastructure hasn't, and the incentives, they're still tied to the past. Reimbursement systems built on outdated procedural codes still treat custom implants like standard ones. There's no reward for precision. Surgeons aren't reimbursed for personalization. Hospitals don't always get budget for innovation. Regulatory pathways are still evolving. Custom devices sit in gray zones. Point-of-care labs face questions about quality systems, licensing, and liability. And even when the tech is ready, there's still a human challenge: adoption. Change is hard, especially in surgery, and it is never comfortable. But progress doesn't wait for comfort. And in orthopedics, comfort has a high cost in revisions, in waste, in cases that could have gone better. Still, we're not starting from zero. Every lab that opens, every surgeon who insists on a plan, every engineer who builds outside the tray system moves the field forward. So no, we're not stuck. The pieces are moving forward. The only question is, how long will we keep calling inefficiency the standard? This podcast will be going deep into those fracture lines. Not just what's broken, but how we rebuild. We'll look at how surgical guides evolved from handcrafted templates to AI-generated tools. We'll explore the FDA's pathways for patient-matched devices and where they still fall short. We'll dive into biologics, bony defects, tumor resection, the rise of point-of-care labs, and what it takes to move from interesting to standard, but always with the same question in mind. What happens when we stop designing for the system and start designing for the person? This is Unstandardized, built for one, the mission to make personalization the standard. I'll see you in episode 2. Thank you.